Welcome to the VetMed Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges VetMed leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the VetMed profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, everybody. It's Crystal Stokes, and joining me today is Dr. Ashlee Bruewer, who is a small animal veterinarian in Colorado. She is the founder of BETTERinary Personal Coaching, which provides goal-based coaching to veterinarians at all stages of their careers. BETTERinary is dedicated to long-term sustainability of the career of veterinary medicine and supporting incredible individuals within the field. Today, we are going to hear Dr. Ashlee's full circle story. She will share what fueled her passion and drive for VetMed, how she temporarily lost it, and most importantly, how she got it back. The lessons within her story can help newer and more seasoned doctors recognize patterns that may be keeping them stuck and empowering strategies to overcome them. So thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Ashlee.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I'm so happy to be here.
Same. So we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, of starting with a fun little icebreaker. And the one that you chose was to reveal something about yourself that not many people know.
Oh, I think my favorite thing to share, and one of my most favorite things to do, is to climb 14ers, which here in Colorado are 14,000 plus foot mountains. And there are lots of them around the state, and they're all varying levels of difficulty. And my husband and I like to knock one or two off a year, and it's a great accomplishment. It's a lot of fun, and we enjoy it.
How long does it take?
Depends on the mountain. I've had one where we got up and down in 2 hours, and then I had another one where it took us like 6 hours round trip. And it just depends on where you start and where the trailhead is compared to the summit. And yeah, they're all different. You never know what you're going to find. And, weather varies too.
A lot of variety. That is really cool.
Yeah, I love it. It's fun.
Well, clearly you're an adventurous spirit. And I think that the topic that we are talking about today kind of speaks to that, like your willingness to come into this space of authenticity and sharing about your story, which is a very personal story. I'm very happy and excited to have you on today because it's close to my heart. As you know, I named my company after this full circle journey that I see so many veterinarians, and myself included as a veterinary professional, having experienced this journey of entering the profession full of passion and drive and love of medicine and hope and ambition. And then somehow along the way, sliding down to the bottom of that circle where we lose those things and we feel hopeless or apathetic, and we think about possibly leaving the profession or other alternatives. And here today, what I like about your story is how you came back up the other side of that circle and rediscovered this passion and drive and love of veterinary medicine. And I hope that today, in sharing this story, that it really does land with those listening that may be feeling stuck. And I want to just preview for those who are tuning in today that you have some really kick-ass tips at the end of this that I want people to hang on for, because they can really be these kind of guiding posts along the way if people are feeling rather lost. So to kick things off, I would love to just learn about your origins of how you got into vet med, what drew you to it, and lit you up with that passion and drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I was one of those stereotypical little girls who went to the vet with her family when she was a child. And what I could not necessarily explain as a 3-year-old, but what I think I was seeing was somebody who was providing a service, not just to my pet, but to my family in such a caring, compassionate way. And I remember leaving that appointment and telling my parents, like, can I be a vet when I grow up? And they said, well, yeah, you can if you want to. And I really held on to that. And I have on my wall in my office a painting my mom saved from preschool that says, when I grow up, I want to be a veterinarian. for dogs and cats. And when I graduated vet school, she had it framed for me. And so I really did start off with this goal as a child, and I held on to it. And through my schooling career, through middle and high school, I was so focused on just getting good grades so I could get into a good undergraduate program that had a pre-vet school, and then eventually get into vet school. So my mission was always to become a vet, and that has taken different variations over the years of what that looks like. There was a part of my life where I wanted to be in research, and a part of my life where I wanted to be in equine sports medicine. And now I'm a small animal veterinary, like my little painting says, and a veterinary coach. And I don't know that I would have ever thought I'd become a veterinary coach when I was, even in undergraduate. It was not something on my radar. So
you probably didn't even know it existed, right?
No, I had no idea. And I'll talk more about that too, where I learned that was even a thing.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. This is so cool. So you entered in, like you basically accomplished your goal. You did it. You became a veterinarian, what you had wanted to be since you were 3 years old. So what happened along the way that started to diminish that love and, attraction to the industry?
Yeah. I think for what happened for me is first year out of school, and I took a job in a different state away from my family and friends. And the job offered me a lot of exposure within the field. So I got to work in a mixed animal practice, and I got to really figure out if I wanted to work with horses, or I got to practice with cattle. It wasn't necessarily my goal, but I also got to work on dogs and cats, and I got a lot of experience in that year. And as the new graduate, I worked a lot of on-call. And I think to be blunt about it, is I just burnt out. I burnt out really quickly, and had, as we all do, you'll have really good days, and there will be some days where you can't serve that pet as well as you would like to. Mm-hmm. It was a hard transition for me to release the mindset that I had to be able to offer perfect gold standard medicine in every single case, because being where I was, there wasn't a tertiary referring hospital. So making choices and giving guidance to clients, feeling like I was more limited, was a really hard thing for me mentally. And I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I had failed myself and the little girl that wanted to be a veterinarian. I felt like I wasn't good enough to be here. And I was just really tired.
Wow. Yeah, such a common theme. And I appreciate you bring in this element of burnout. And I've noticed with many conversations, and also with the research points too, is that there are a variety of things that cause burnout. What causes burnout for one person may not cause burnout for another. And what you were describing, it sounds like you had very high expectations of yourself. You had a standard of what you thought veterinary medicine should be. When you weren't able to meet that standard every day, it really weighed on you heavily. And then on top of the on-call, probably lack of time for self-care and balance, all of it just sort of came crashing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was, a point where I was so tired and I was so exhausted, and felt that I wasn't doing the best that I could. And, I was doing the best that I could with the resources I had. And everybody around me understood that. I, however, did not. I still held on to this, gold standard. What does that look like? Can I send this client to somebody else? And I still had something in my mind, I think, of, well, there's somebody out there that can do this better. There's an internal medicine specialist 4 hours across the state that has access to more tools that I don't have here. But that's not practical for everyone to travel 4 hours to go to somebody who has that. And I can see that so clearly now, but I couldn't then. And there was a point where I had gotten so exhausted and burnt out, I had suicidal ideation, and had not set myself up for the ability to work through that. And what I mean by that is I did not have a medical support team. I didn't have a counselor or a therapist. It wasn't even really on my radar at that point in my life. And it it scared me. It scared me a lot. And when that happened, I was fortunate enough to have a really, really good friend who answered the phone when I was having these scary thoughts. And I just told her what I was thinking about, and that I just felt like I was letting myself down, and that I was failing the little girl who set out to be this veterinarian. And she sat and listened to me for a good long while and said, well, I don't know that I have resources to give you, but I do know of somebody who has gotten their initial coach training and is looking for coaching clients. And would you be interested in being connected with her to be a potential practice client? And I had no idea what a coach was. And looking back, I will say this: if you are having suicidal ideation, there are so many resources available to you that are free resources. I don't necessarily recommend searching for coaching if you're in that position, but this is what happened to me. Is I got exposed to it, and I said, yes, I would love to work with anybody who might be able to help me. So she connected me to this coach, and I worked with her for about 3 months. And what she did for me was hold the space, which is a term we use in coaching, but really she allowed me to untangle all of these thoughts that I had, and all of these goals that I had, in such a way that I was able to see clearly what it was that I wanted from my life and my career, and then make really clear goals to reach, or really clear actions to reach those goals. And in that 3 months, I went from feeling disempowered, disengaged, overwhelmed, burnt out, to feeling like I can do this. I can find a position that's going to work well for me. I have all of this wonderful experience, and experience under mentors that cared about me, that I can then take that forward in whatever direction I choose, which is ultimately what I did. I found a job that looked different than what I thought that I would have, but I ended up loving it and landed in small animal medicine. And that's where I am now.
Oh, I love this story so much. And I'll just go ahead and plug for those listening. If anybody listening is struggling with suicidal ideation, NAMV, which is Not One More Vet, is a great organization to start with. You can also, there are crisis hotlines that will help you find resources and get you through that difficult period. And of course, psychotherapy, psychiatry, all those things can be really helpful. And, we all come to these things in our own unique way. And for you, coaching happened to be the golden ticket that worked for you. I wanted to come back to that initial stage when you were first exploring those thoughts. You said you were untangling thoughts. She was holding space for you to kind of sort things out. I'm curious about your mindset at that time when you were struggling, as well as your perspective of what you were experiencing. Was it more of, it's all about me, it's a personal thing, I'm doing something wrong, versus it being a systemic issue, or maybe a bit of both? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I think I started in the mindset of it was me. I was the problem. I wasn't good enough, or didn't have enough experience to create, or to be, the best vet for that pet in the situation. And that was really, that's natural part of being an early graduate or early career veterinarian, is that you aren't going to know as much as your counterparts, other associates, or your referring hospital. But you do have to start somewhere, and you do have to do the best you can with what you got. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was a lot of the mindset of, I am the problem, or I'm not good enough. But what slowly I was able to work through was to determine that I am good enough, and I can do a really good job with the resources that I have. And I also get to choose the place that I do that, and the circumstances I do that, and the clinic environment, the animals I want to work on. And she gave me the chance to really, I think, find empowerment in those choices, and to say, I'm actually creating this life for myself. And I will say there's a level of privilege there. I didn't have a family at the time. I didn't own a house. I had whatever fit in my car. I didn't have a lot of things at the time. So I had a lot of choice and ability to move quickly and find a place that I could land well in. But in untangling these thoughts, I was able to really get away from the idea that I was the problem, and realized that I was the solution to all my problems if I just could define what it was that I wanted to do.
Huge mindset shift. I also want to go back another step and ask, I think many of us, there's an archetype of human that I see that are attracted to veterinary medicine. And part of that personality makeup, I think I notice a pattern of us not really wanting to seek help. It's more like, I need to fix this myself. I'm responsible for me. I don't want to burden anybody with this. How did you go from that kind of, because you kind of alluded to it, that feeling, to making the leap to actually reaching out to your friend? Like, that was a huge step you took. How'd that happen?
Well, I think that like a lot of people in situations like that, you feel like you might have hit rock bottom, like something has to change. I was having these thoughts about ending my life that I didn't want to have. And I was scared. I was scared of myself and what I could do in that situation. And in that moment, I was like, I got to talk to someone. And I'm going to cry. But thankfully, she answered, and of course she did. She's one of my best friends. But it was that moment of, I need help right now because I don't trust myself with myself.
So really that hitting bottom is, it's such a painful place that you really don't have any other options, and reaching out is what you decided to do.
Yeah. And I think from a coaching standpoint, which I haven't really talked about how I got into coaching, but as a coach, I would love to help people before they get to that point, getting to the point to say like, well, something's got to change and I'm willing to change it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great place to start, starting where I was at rock bottom. It is a call to action, but if I can help other veterinarians never get there,
totally,
that would
we're on the
be
same
amazing.
page. I know.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine that cycle, like we're sliding down the circle.
Yeah.
It's like preventative care. If you know you're getting to the yellow zone, you don't want to get into the red. So how can we identify those yellow flags early? Yes, I hear you. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's why we're having these conversations, though, because I think people listening, you can tell when you're kind of heading in that direction. You're becoming more apathetic. You're feeling more stuck. You're not at the bottom yet, but you can forecast that it's coming. So I think as we continue this conversation, we'll touch on some of that. So I'd love to know where that transition happened for you of deciding to become a coach, and tell us more about your business.
Yeah, so that happened about a year after I had transitioned into a new role where I was working in small animal practice and thriving, loving my job. And I could not stop talking about what this coach did for me. Everyone who came into my life heard about her and heard about how she changed my life and really saved my life in a lot of ways. She helped me save my life is really what she did. But I couldn't stop talking about it. And finally, another friend of mine was like, well, if you think coaching is so great, why don't you do it? And I was like, well, I guess I could. I was like, maybe every veterinarian should have access to something like this. And she's like, well, why don't you be that person? So that led me to find a coaching program and get started, and eventually start Veterinary Personal Coaching, which is my small practice where I work with usually early career veterinarians who are trying to figure out where they want to be in the field of veterinary medicine and meet the goals that they have for themselves in that early part of their career. That being said, I'll work with anybody. If you've got a goal you want to work on, or if you want to define what your goals are, I'm happy to help with that as well.
Excellent. Well, as the person, I'm sure you practice what you preach, because we were talking a little bit about that today. As coaches ourselves, we're a work in progress. But I think that for me, I'm really curious to hear about how you take care of yourself, some of your best practices, and how that might sort of inform the things that you wish your younger self had known. The tips and main takeaways that you want the people you coach, as well as people listening today, to really be focused on.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think there are really 5 pillars of things 5 main things I wish I could have communicated to myself as an early career veterinarian. I think I would have saved myself a lot of stress. The first one is really, I know I've talked a lot about goals, but the first one is to mind your mind and to know your goals. And what I mean by this is that when we have a clear direction that we want to take our lives, we have a goal in mind, what we can then do is reverse engineer steps as small as they need to be to take the next right, easy step towards that goal. And that doesn't always mean that, you might have this great pie in the sky goal. Maybe you want to become a practice owner. It doesn't mean that that's going to happen tomorrow, nor should it, but it does give you this backbone to go off of or guidelines to go off of to take easy, small steps along the way to get closer to it. I find, and I include myself in this, that a lot of us think we know what our goals are, but they're not that clear. And when they're not that clear, it becomes really hard to find small steps to get you closer to it. So being very clear on what it is that you want, I think is the first step. All right. So the second one is the one that I think would have made the most impact for me as an early career veterinarian, and that is to acknowledge the stress cycle and really to understand the differences between how our minds and bodies dealt with stress and reward in the educational system versus how we need to learn to adapt and deal with stress and reward in a working environment, such as clinical practice. What I mean by that is I think a lot of us got into vet school after maybe 4 years of undergrad and then, before that, high school. And the way that our educational system is built is to build in these periods of stress or extreme stress, like finals week, for example, followed by a period of relief, which is often a break. And many of us will give ourselves rewards within that time. Maybe it's a vacation or relaxing with your friends during your break, going out for a night on the town after a big test. But you can start to see how in the educational system, we had these periods of stress that we knew were coming. We could prepare for. We could tell our brains that, hey, if I work really hard for this week and I take this test on Friday, I'm going to have a break, I'm going to have release and maybe a reward. What doesn't happen in real life is that cyclical process of stress, extreme stress, relief, and reward. Mm-hmm. And that can be really hard on a person. Totally. And not being cognitively aware that that's happening, your body will start to feel tired. You might start to feel like, man, I just can't keep up, or I haven't had a break. And it's because we've been conditioned for maybe, over a decade at that point mm-hmm. to our brains to really expect reward after a period of extreme stress. So what this all sums together to say is that it's extremely important to build rewards into your life, to take advantage of your vacation days, to give yourself breaks. And it's even more important to just be aware of this difference, because if you're aware of it, then you can say, hey, yeah, this is a little bit different. I do feel tired. I haven't had a break in a little while. Maybe I need to build in something to give myself and my mind the reward that it needs.
Let's hang on this one for a minute, because I also, I personally really relate to this so strongly. I was one of those kids that I think, I look back on it and I'm like, is it nature or nurture? Was I born this way? Because I had my whole childhood all the way until I hit my own wall. I think I was about in my mid-20s when I hit the wall. I just I thought rest was a 4-letter word. I did not take vacations or breaks. I'd work through being sick. I thought I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that was even an undergraduate. Like I didn't experience a stress cycle release. And mm-hmm. then in hitting my own wall and going to therapy and then eventually becoming a therapist, our stories are quite similar in the parallels. Learning the science behind stress, and that stress is a cycle. It's supposed to rise and peak and fall. And many of us don't allow ourselves to complete the cycle. The cycle rises to the top and we kind of hold it there. Like, we're just keeping it at the top. And if we have even daily practices to complete the stress cycle in a miniature way, as well as I think what you're talking about is like longer arching, restful periods, mandatory for our own mental and physical health. It's similar to how we look at exercise, that you do something hard, you stress your body, you might get sore afterwards or feel very fatigued the next day, then you must recover. And they say the body actually gets stronger, not during exercise, but during the recovery period. And I think our psyche is like that as well. Our mental health also needs that rest, just like our body does. So I think that this one we can't overstate the importance of it. And I think it's so personal too. Like, you mentioned how you experience your stress cycle. It may be different from others. So it's that going back to your first point of the mindfulness piece of knowing yourself, mind your mind, and then being aware of your own stress habits and how you might be sabotaging yourself by not completing your stress cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first step is being aware and then finding out what works for you. And you might not know that immediately, but being able to take action to try new things and see what's going to work long term is ultimately what's going to make it easier for you to stay in a field like this long term, to be able to have the ability to bounce back when you need to, if you want to.
Wonderful. All right. Point 1 and 2 down. How about point number 3?
Awesome. So the third one is to swap out perfectionism for adaptive excellence. And I kind of alluded to this in my story. I held on to a lot of feelings of inadequacy because I wasn't a tertiary referral specialist in my first job, which is unrealistic, right? But to me, it felt like I wasn't able to offer all the things that I knew was available, which is true. But I had a lot of education, a lot of tools, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of ability to help pets in the situation that they were in. And as we all know, we get into situations where, client finances come into play, access to resources comes into play. So what I mean by adaptive excellence is really doing the absolute best you can with what you have. And I found that a lot of clients really appreciate this being expressed to them as well, because a lot of times they want to do the very best they can as well. They might have limitations, but being able to offer them, as much as you can, and maybe a second or third option within that fits what they can do financially or with their time or what they have available to them, also allows them to feel like they're doing the very best they can within their resources. So a lot of us do come into this field as perfectionists, and it doesn't always serve us. We always want to do the best we can and have the right answer, but there are so many times where that right answer does not exist. Mm-hmm. So we need to do the best we can with what we have.
Nice. Here. I very much support that. I don't think I ever had a really strong perfectionistic tendency, but I think I was more of a maximizer. Like I would just do extra. Mm-hmm. Like why? If the report could be 12 to 15 pages, 12 is good. And I was like, no, it has to be 15.
Yeah.
You have to think like, it's so silly. I think it's a mark of wisdom of knowing when enough is enough. And that, there are a lot of gray areas in veterinary medicine. I think that is difficult when you come into the world and you feel responsible for an animal's life and you don't want gray areas, but that is a reality and it's challenging.
Yeah. It's challenging and it's very uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of us. It's a very uncomfortable place to be in, but that subtle mindset shift into what can I do here with what I have available and what the client can do that's going to make this pet's life better in whatever capacity I have the ability to do. And that feels so much better than banging on the door of like, well, if I were this person or if I had this resource or if I were in a different place, there are a lot of things we can't change. But within the realm of what's possible, we can do the best for that pet.
That's great. Lovely. Well said. I think point number 4 is going to be another one of my favorite ones.
Yes, I think so too. This is a huge one. And this was a lesson learned from my story too, because when I went out that first year, I didn't have health insurance. I didn't prioritize it. I was young and like, yeah, do I need it? I need to save some money. I don't have anything coming out of school. But the fourth one is developing a personal support team. And the first thing is, I think, giving yourself access to medical professionals, finding a job that does offer you health insurance and perhaps even offers you access to mental health professionals. Because inevitably, there may be times in your career where you do need to talk to a professional about something you're going through, and having access to that is going to set you apart. I didn't set myself up to have access to that right away, which is why I ended up asking my friend ended up giving me this option to talk to this coach, which I'm so thankful for. But I wish I could have gone back and had access to medical professionals and other professional therapists in the moment. That being said, there are a lot of free resources that we've already, Crystal's already touched on, like NOMV, Vets for Vets programs through the VIN Foundation. There are suicide hotlines that you can reach out to as well. And if beyond that, you want to work on other personal goals, having access to a coach can be great. Having access to mentors in different parts of the field can be so impactful. And I use the plural form on purpose because there are lots of facets of our work life that we may need to model after multiple people. We're not necessarily going to be a carbon copy of our boss, and nor should we be. So reaching out to multiple people who embody different parts of or different versions of you that you might want to embody, and learning from them is so helpful. And being comfortable with who those mentors are. So finding somebody that like, and trust is so important. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to taking the time to invest in yourself and ask for help when you need it. Giving yourself access to those people and those professionals, I think will be so worth it in the long run.
So lovely. I've some great mentors in the community, and I find it reminds me of what I think about when it comes to raising children, that as children have multiple role models, their mom, their dad, their auntie, their grandparents, friends in the community that help care for them. They get exposed to so much, and it's so nice for them to have that pool of resources. And as adults, we tend to narrow our pool down instead of expanding it. But different mentors bring different gems of wisdom and ways that they can help support. So it's I think a unique thing to bring into the conversation that sometimes is overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, it brings up a level of what don't I know? This person might have done something different than I would have ever thought about doing in my career. Doesn't mean you have to adopt that strategy or use it, but it gives you a different perspective on problem solving that you may not have had before. And I think asking that question of your mentors is really helpful. What don't I know that that you can teach me is so impactful, and it will compound over time.
Definitely. Another thing I love about mentorship too is observing them in difficult situations. Like some mentors will have a very assertive approach. They'll go at it, direct. And you say, wow, that works really well, or that didn't work so well sometimes. And then another mentor might have a very gentle approach. You say, oh, wow, that worked well in that situation. Again, not well in others. And you sort of observe these different styles of managing conflict and difficult conversations, or managing their team, or whatever it may be. And then you kind of make an amalgamation of your own style of like what feels most natural to you. And I think it can broaden our horizons too, to say if for instance, if I'm not naturally a very direct person, but I witness a direct encounter go well, maybe I lean into being a little more direct and see how it feels, and feel a little bit more courageous in that. So the role modeling thing is, if you can't, if you've not seen it modeled, it's hard to envision how to do it. And role models can really help with that on the mentorship side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. All right. We are coming down the home stretch of your last point.
Yes. So number 5 is surprise yourself. And I think this is a truism across a lot of VetMed. If you talk to anybody who's been in the field for some time, you've probably heard them say, well, I started off doing this, but clearly now I do this. And I think that we have the most amazing and versatile field. There's so much that you can do within the field of veterinary medicine that doesn't have to be clinical practice. It doesn't have to be a certain species. Mm-hmm. There's so much you can do as a veterinarian, and not limiting yourself to one aspect of it can make a huge difference in your long-term career. And just because you never envisioned yourself being in a certain part of the field doesn't mean that you couldn't be a really good fit. Mm-hmm. Giving yourself the grace to try new things and hear people out if you have a new opportunity, or, taking steps to try something different. We don't have to necessarily stay in a situation that doesn't feel good to us. There's a lot of opportunity out there to change things up. And I think this circles back to the whole idea of knowing your goals and understanding and getting very clear on what your goals are and what you want out of your life and your career, and then reverse engineering to try to make that a reality for you. But yeah, surprise yourself. There's so much out there.
So fun. Dr. Ashlee, your story, I think, is very applicable to the times that we're in. I appreciate you being on and sharing your journey and these 5 strategies that I feel like can be so helpful for anybody that is maybe in the early stages of losing that love and passion and drive for veterinary medicine, and they want to reconnect with it or make it stronger. I think that your personal connection with coaching says a lot, that you came to it in a dark time. It was extremely beneficial for you, so much so that you yourself decided to become a coach. And now you have this coaching program that really is helping to support younger doctors, which is a very difficult stage in the veterinary profession. So, Dr. Ashlee, as we're wrapping this podcast up, are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the listeners today?
Yes. So I think that my biggest takeaway from my last 7 years of being a practicing veterinarian is that I really got into this field because I loved animals and I loved being able to serve the people that love their animals. But as I've progressed on the coaching side of things and as I continue to work with veterinarians, I think I stay in this field because I love veterinary professionals. And I think that they're my favorite species. I think the people who come to this field are incredible humans who care so much about what they do and do incredible work, sometimes with limited resources. And I just couldn't have more love for this field.
Totally agree with you. So for those amazing humans that are listening right now, what is the best way for them to find you, connect with you, and learn more?
So the best way to contact me or to learn more about me is going to be on Instagram at dr.coach_AshleeB, or on Facebook at Veterinary Personal Coaching, or finally on LinkedIn at Ashlee Bruewer.
Wonderful. I will link all that up in the show notes so nobody has to worry about misspellings. So just click on the show notes to find all of those links. And Dr. Ashlee, thank you so much for being on with us today. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.